ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। So Gurmukh Pyareo Sadh Sangat Ji, welcome. It's actually week 3. Welcome to week 3 of the course. I just double check that my slides are correct. So again, just a reminder, and thank you to all of those who have your camera on today. That really helps us to show that there's interaction. Just an invitation to the Sadh Sangat that as we speak of our Guru's words, of that Turki Bani ai, tin sagali chinta mitai, that Bani, those words that have come from Paramatma, from Vaiguru themselves, where all of our chint, all of our worries, all of our fears disappear, that we give that Gurbani the respect that it deserves, and we try to keep ourselves present as we listen, as we open our minds to absorb these ideas that we have been blessed as the Sangat to hear. Very quickly, you know, we all have different lives, we all walk different paths, and sometimes some weeks we can be more connected than others, some days, some moments even, we can feel more connected than others. And for me this week, on a personal note, it's been a very roller coaster journey. There's been a lot of things happening. But what's been so amazing was this realization that despite all of the things that have happened recently, that chaos has been like a storm on the outside, but the inside has stayed relatively firm, has stayed stable. And the realization was that Maharaj kende ke virle kei ke, there's very few and far between that get to walk on this path, that get to know the real truth about what life is about, what this journey is about. And to be in that moment where it did not matter what was happening on the outside, there was still that connection on the inside. It was like literally like that kamal daful, that lotus flower that is upon the mud but is not affected by it. That was such a humbling moment. And again, you know, this is why Maharaji has brought us here. This is why we wanted to do this course, is to share that actually some people say, you know, I think it's a quote from Buddha, it might be a misquote even, that life is suffering. And, you know, Maharaj began there like Nanak Dukhiya, Sab Sansar, but we always take everything in context. And so Maharaj is reminding us that when we're not on this path of the true Guru, when we are sometimes just paying lip service to the physical form, or we just go matha teken, or we just read that part, but our mind is elsewhere, we can still be stuck in that suffering. But when we actually start to kama that bhajan, when we start to actually do what Maharaji has asked us to do, our minds change, our lives change, and it becomes such a beautiful life. So again, just a reminder of those commitments, that we're open, that we're present, and that we do it. It's about the karni. Again, it's about doing that simran. This is not just about, oh, I've collected these ideas, or I've read Gurbani and I know my itihas. That is all important as well. But where that true transformation, that true change, that true, where we get that true hazuri, that presence of Maharaj, is through that Garni, is through that Simran. So just quickly, as we get started, what changes, if you don't mind just writing on the chat, what changes have you noticed in yourself? Or maybe even others have noticed in you, just in the couple of weeks that we've already been doing this? Or if you've been doing Simran before or for a long time, what have you noticed in yourself, or what have others noticed in you that is different now? And so just as you're writing that, it's, again, for me personally, it's really important that we acknowledge that, not only because it's recognizing Maharaji's Kirpa, how it's showing up in our lives with every breath, that grace is raining down. But also we have to samja our man, which is what we're going to talk about today. We have to help our mind to understand where this kirpa is showing up in our lives and how this simran and how this gyan, this understanding is helping us. Because if we don't put attention on it, what happens is kal, maya, the panchod, the negative tendencies we have within this body, if you like, they will start to convince us that it's not working, or I don't get it, or you know, those tricks are played upon our mind. So when we stop and acknowledge how it's showing up for us, we will keep remembering. Hanji. So Susan Benji will just come up suddenly on my screen. So Darshan Benji, do you want to?
Waheguru, Hanji. So just going through the comments, more acceptance and patience. Susan Gore Benji saying make more of an effort to do tasks. I'm not sure if that means it feels like more of an effort to do tasks, to plan and organize. And but Hanji, sometimes with the Simran, what happens is that we start to rely less on that analytical mind that is continually judging, evaluating, problem solving. And we'll talk more about this, but this analytical mind that we hold very dear to us, that we feel is really serving us, is helping us to get through life and come up with the optimal outcomes. And what we start to find when doing the Simran is that we enter into an alternative state of mind or being, where we realize that we don't have to do all of that effortful thinking and planning and problem solving, that there's an alternative way, and that is a way of surrender, of acceptance, which I think a few of you guys are saying that you're finding it easier to accept. Internal calmness, less reactive to situations outside of my control, noticing when the thoughts aren't serving me, and quickly reciting Vaheguru to center. That's amazing. Feeling calmer, anxiety has disappeared pretty much, incredible. When I'm talking to others, I come from a place of love. That's beautiful. This is it. This path is one of love. This is a path of love. We can even put aside religion, we can put aside spirituality. The highest kind of state, the key, what we're trying to get to is this loving devotion, a state of love. Finding slow breathing, Vahe, in, out, very powerful, profound silence afterwards. So amazing reading these comments. For me, practice improved my concentration. Absolutely. The more we do it, the better we get. Benji always says practice makes progress. More calmer when handling tough situations, more present, calm. Husband said, I'm not stressing. That's amazing. When the husbands start commenting, or the wives, then you're changing, because they see all of us, don't they? Usually spouses see the good, the bad, the ugly. And so when they start commenting that things are changing, that's a really strong indication that they truly are. Calmer me, less reactive, stronger and calmer, disconnecting, but it feels like a good thing. So, Hanji.
Also, there's the comment there about the husband comment, but Benji's also written, I had a moment when I felt all as one, which is so profound, right?
I agree. So this is it, like, sometimes when we're doing this work, or less grumpy parent, I can relate to that. And this is the thing, like, sometimes it's hard to see when initial stages of doing the Simran, firstly, we've got those entities inside of us, those sponge that are pulling us away from connection, continually giving us thoughts that you don't need to do Simran, we do something else is of a priority. And then, being in those early stages, and sometimes the Simran being hard work initially, to clear those thoughts. And then, but the thing is, when we actually get to that point of connection, there's nothing that can, once we've had the experience, once we've had that glimpse, even those entities, those sponge, the thoughts they bring, we're not convinced by them anymore because we've experienced something deeper, stronger, that feels so real that, we have that, we start to build that faith, that bharosa, that kind of bank of experience, which means that whenever the mind is pulled back into those vichar, into those patterns of reactivity, low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, all of those things, because we've now got that bank of experience, that feeling that understanding, that wisdom, and that I've got Saj inside of me. When I did the Simran, I sat, the outward situation, nothing had changed. I wasn't solving anything. The situations, the turmoil, the difficult life events, the obstacles, the problems were still the same. But somehow, in that moment when I connected to the Simran, I connected to a Saj inside of me. The moment that we know that that Saj exists, then it's always an option to us. Whether we choose to take that option, sometimes those sponge are stronger than us. The mind is still developing the strength to connect to that Saj. But now we know, Benji and I always say, there's no unknowing. We can't unknow what we know. So, Hanji.
Amazing. Sorry, having computer problems. Hanji, so today we're going to go a little bit deeper into that game of life, which is the game of the mind. Again and again, in Gurbani, Guru Maharaj is constantly and consistently talking to the mind. So what is this game of life? It's played within our man, within our mind. And so this is a little bit of a summary, but we're slowly going to take it further as well. So one of the things that we've discussed, especially last week, is our true nature is that Jod Sarup Man, Tu Jod Sarup hai apna mool pachan. There's an instruction and a truth in there. So Maharaj is telling us, oh mind, you are the embodiment of that divine light. And the instruction is apna mool pachan, recognize your source, recognize who you truly are. And as we spoke about in previous weeks, we might think we're our body. We're male, we're female, we're this family name. We might think that we're our trauma, we're our past. We might think we're a mother, we're a father, a child of someone, an accountant. We might think that we're the content of our mind, that we're our thoughts. I'm someone who's depressed, I'm someone who is anxious. But Maharaj is reminding us again and again that our true nature is that Jod Sarup. This body is like kappare, is like clothes. Every morning and every night we get changed, we put on different clothes. In the same way as we go from body to body through the Lakshara Juna, we take on different bodies, just like changing our clothes. But that true nature, that remains stable. That Jyot remains stable, just like the rays of the sun, just like a drop within the ocean. We are a part of Paramatma, and Paramatma is a part of us. And so what is our purpose? Again, we spoke previously, we think our purpose is in maybe what job we do, or whether that is a job as a parent, or whether that's a job in the world, or what seva we're doing. Nowadays we think about our purpose as that, but Maharaj tells us, it's your turn to meet Vaheguru, to merge back with Vaheguru, to have that milab. And so Maharaj told us, we spoke about last week, that when we come into this world, that Dasam Dwar, that 10th gate that connected us in the mother's womb to Paramatma, As we come out of the womb, that 10th gate closes and there's 9 doors open. No, no darwaje, I've forgotten the shabad. Dasava gupta rakhaya. No dware pargat kiye, dasava gupta rakhaya. So there's 9 doors, the 2 eyes, the ears, the mouth, the nostrils, the 2 down below. They open up, and that 10th gate that has that direct connection closes. And so what happens then? Maharaji gives us lots of shabads in Gurbani where it tells us where we fall in love with our mother's milk. We start to fall in love with Maya, and we start to forget. And if you look at that newborn baby that is fed and the nappy's changed, it is full of peace. It is full of bliss. It is full of love. You can't help but smile when you see that baby, whether that's baby sleeping, whether it's, smiling or laughing, because it is so close to Paramatma. But as we start to give that baby a name, we start to convince it that it is, for example, Amandeep Kaur, right? As that baby starts to grow, it thinks, well, when I cry and I drink the mother's milk, that is what's making me feel better. When I get a toy, when I get a snack, I've been crying and I get those things, that is what's causing me to be happy. And slowly, slowly, through this kill, as we'll explain, through the Panchjot, through Gal, through Maya, but also we can understand it on a dunyavi level, on a worldly level, through those that programming, that conditioning, that our happiness is going to come from the outside. As we grow, it's through our friends, through our toys, it's through what job you do, what car you have, how many houses you have, what holidays you go on. Is everybody listening to me? Do I have honor in this family? Do people respect me? We start to believe that that's where our happiness is going to come from. And for most of us, we've been on that journey, we've achieved all those external goals, and we still feel that hole, we still feel that emptiness, that actually, is this all there is? Is it just about the worldly success, or is there more to it? And now we know that Maharaj is telling us our true purpose is that inner connection, is to recognize it's not just a mental understanding, like Benji was saying. It's not just about the analytical mind, our intelligence. We can have as much understanding of this as we want, but this is about an experience that we're having beyond the physical senses of Paramatma's Hazuri, of their presence within us, that they are us, they're a part of us. And whether that is in the form of hearing Shabad, hearing this internal sound, whether that is made manifest through a sense of peace, through a sense of bliss that is not dependent on the outside, whether that manifests as Prakash, as seeing that amazing jyot, that amazing light within our mind. However we experience that, it is dependent on that experience. And for that, yes, a lot of us say, Jado kirpa hogi, when that kirpa happens, when that grace happens, there is the grace. But to me, that grace is always raining down on everyone at every moment. But it's, are we ready to receive it? And so Maharaji again and again will give us an instruction. They will give us a hukam. Aap japo, avarohe naam japavo. Chant that name and get others to chant that name as well. And so where we're going to focus a bit more today is understanding what is this interplay, why have we become disconnected, and how can we reconnect again? So Maharaji, as Benji was explaining last week, and it's important we do this repetition, we read Gurbani every day, we do the Simran every day, because this man doesn't get it straight away, right? There's things in the way of us understanding. So it's important we have that repetition. We do our Nityanem. We do it every day to help us understand, because we keep forgetting those Panchjot, that Maya, that Kal gets in the way. So there's these two forms of Maya that we can understand. One is what we typically understand as this physical reality. We might say it's our gaddi, our car. We might say it's our house. We might say it's this body. Sarir sab mool hai Maya. This body is Maya. But also what we hear less about within, let's say, for example, generally in the Gurdwara, is that Sukshma Maya, this invisible, this subtle Maya, is also our vichar, our thoughts. Maharaj kende vichar mare tare tare ult jun na ave. That when we kill these thoughts, then we're saved. We're saved in the sense that not just, this concept of when we die we go to heaven, but actually we're saved from maya, we're saved from suffering, we're saved from dukh, and we get to know our true self. So these thoughts that people have spoken about within their comments, within the chat, letting go of those thoughts that are coming up, it's a very important concept, which just in my personal experience, I can't speak for anybody else, which is not talked about much in terms of prachar, in terms of the gurdwara. We talk very much about the karam, the physical actions of doing our part and taking amrit, wearing your kakar. But what about that internal game? Because for me, that's what it's all about from that understanding of Gurbani. And, how do our thoughts show up? Our thoughts show up as our belief systems. Our thoughts show up as a constantly remembering the past. Something happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, a month ago, and we keep replaying it. We just cannot accept what happened. And we're creating there's a rog within our body, right? Maharaj Kende Farid Ji tells us in Gurbani, बुरे दा भला कर गुस्सा मन ना हटाए दे ही रोग ना लगे पल्ले सब गिच पाए. So Farid ji is telling us that when someone does bad to you, and I'm going to use it in the inverse situation, if someone does bad to you and you don't let go of that, you're going to get rog, you're going to get disease in your body. And so what Farid ji is saying is, actually, if you say pala to them, if you wish good upon them, we have to do that within our mind, right? When you wish good upon them, you won't get it all in your body and you'll get everything that you need. So we've got to understand that this Maya it's not just about this physical reality. It's not about, oh, go and live in a cave, don't have money, don't have children, don't have wealth. It's not about that at all. Maharaji's given us that for a reason, right? We can enjoy that, but it's this internal game that makes us attached to that. And those very things that we chase after, that we think are going to bring us happiness, are the very things that cause us dukh. I work in a hospital, I do one-to-one coaching. So I get to see the insides of other people's lives as well as my own. So I get to see, where people were desperate to have children and that brought them dukh, and then they had that child and now they're lying in the hospital. And that very thing that they thought brought them sukh, now their child isn't coming to see them, or they're trying to get them to sign over all the money to them and using that as collateral. We wanted the house, we wanted the money, but now we're just worried constantly about, am I going to lose it? Am I going to lose it? So there's very things when we become attached to them that are the ones that bring us that suffering, that dukh. And so again, Gurbani is mainly speaking to the mind and explaining this game of our mind, this game of our life, what our purpose is, and how to win it. So I'm going to invite Darshan Benji. Benji, do you want to explain the internal family, or did you want to go into Dragon Maya?
Let's see what comes up. I'm going to try and see if I can use the whiteboard on here, Sangatji.
So just as Benji's setting that up, let's prepare our minds, because if our mind is still stuck in, I've got to do this today and this happened yesterday, it's not going to be ready. It's not going to be prepared to understand what's being spoken about here. So let's do a couple of minutes Simran just to prepare that mind, to bring it into that presence and to connect to that Jyot, to Paramatma. So our Gaviya, we're going to sing Vaheguruji's praises, Guru. We're going to listen to the sound of our voice, anchor that mind into our voice, and we're going to do it with that love, that loving desire. Ao Karo Kirpa. Why Guru, 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 Waheguru, 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 Waheguru. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
So, Sangatji, can everybody see the whiteboard? If you just let me know in the chat, and the writing on there as well. Okay. So we're going to do a continuation of the Kale that we started last week. And what we were understanding is that Paramatma, at the beginning, when the Srishti was created, we started to understand that there are two aspects to this Kale. There's Maya and there's Sach. There's Pawn and there's Nam. Can anybody see the writing at this point?
Hanji, you can see it.
Somebody can't on the chat.
So it might depend on.
And collaboration off at the top. Somebody say, could I? Don't know how to do that. Okay. Somehow there are lots of lines.
Yeah, so they can see it now. Hanji.
Okay. There's lots of lines appearing on here. Let me see if I can erase that. Just hold on. Okay. So this game is of two aspects. There's Maya, there's Sach, there's Pawn, there's Nam or Shabad. And these two aspects are both present within this creation, within this play. I've shared the board for people to add to. Okay, let's see. I think that's where the lines are coming up. Sorry, Sangatji. Maaf karna. I'm going to try. Does anybody know how I can turn collaboration off? Because I think whenever anybody touches their own screen, the lines are forming. So let's see if I can turn that off.
Or just try not to touch the screen.
Yeah, try not to touch the screen, but I think I've turned it off as well. Okay, so I'm gonna just Vaiguji, sorry for the break, for the disruption. But this is an opportunity to see if we can keep one foot in that connection, in the understanding, in presence, even when there are distractions. So it's a challenge for me as well. So we have these two aspects that are both present within the creation, within this play. And our job, Gurbani tells us, is to see if we can access that Naam, that Shabad, that Sach, whilst being in this material realm, whilst being in this physical body, which is the beginning of this material realm, which does not belong to us, which is not our true home, our true identity. Gurbani tells us, Maya, Brahma, Rame, Sabsang, that everywhere there is Maya and there is Brahm. It's Ralya Hoya in this play. And the Gurmukh's job is to be able to sift away, is able to cut away that Maya to access that Brahm. And how do we do this, Sangatji? So in order to continue to develop on the wisdom we already have and the practice that we now have behind us, that we know that Sahaj exists inside of us, that we have access to spiritual realm now. And how do we know that we have access to spiritual realm? When we experience that Sahaj, that acceptance, that patience, that tolerance, the reduced reactivity, all of those things that Sangat have shared, we know that we're accessing spiritual realm, because the closer we get to home, the more Sahaj that we experience. Which Gurbani tells us, Sab Gar Sukh Vasya, that there is peace within the home. Sab Kich Gar Mein Bahar Nahi, that everything is inside of the Sarir. So developing from the last week's Kirn, we got to the point where we were understanding that the mind that is a drop in the ocean of Paramatma, the mind that was separated from Paramatma, was sent to play this game. And there were many, many forms, countless forms that were made, and countless plays that were started in each and every single Sarir. And Gurbani tells us that in every single Sarir, in every single Ji, there was a home that was created. There is a true home. There is access to that spiritual realm. And so we're going to try and understand a bit more of the intricacies of the game of life, of what is contained within the Sarir, what this game comprises of. So we're going to draw the physical body, because everything is within this Sarir. Everything that we need to know, all of the entities, all of the players, all of the opponents are within the Sarir. So the mind that is sent into this physical Sarir to play this game, there is an option as to how the mind plays. So in Gurbani, the mind is described as a trader or as a merchant. Now, whenever we go and try and buy something, we go to the shopping store, we take our money with us, don't we? When we're going to do any kind of trade within this material realm, we have wealth. And Gurbani tells us within this spiritual game, this play, we also have wealth. And that wealth is our swas, our breaths. And when the mind is sent after receiving its training in the mother's womb, where it is separated and connected to Sach, and when it is separated, it feels the agan. When it's separated from the Naam, it feels the agan in that womb. And when it's connected to that Naam, it feels that bliss, that Sahaj, it's protected. And in the same way, Sangatji, once the mind receives that training, it comes into this Sarir, this agan of the Sarir, and this wider material realm. And the mind has to learn how to connect to that peace and how to save itself from that agan, from that fire. And Gurbani tells us that how does the mind connect to agan, and how does the mind connect to peace? And Gurbani tells us it's through the choices that the mind makes with how it spends its precious wealth, that's precious breaths. And we are sent into this sarir. Every single time we are sent to play again and again. We leave the sarir when we die, and then we go into another sarir, then we leave again, and then we come back to continue to play, to continue to get closer, to get to the point where we finally win the game of life so we can merge back to Paramatma. We don't come back in sarir again. And it depends on how well we've played, whether we've won or whether we've lost. And Gurbani tells us that these breaths that we have, this wealth, it is limited. We only have a limited amount of wealth. And it doesn't increase and it cannot decrease. Gurbani tells us, Gin kale sab divas saas, neh badan katan dil sar. The wealth that we are given when we come into whichever costume we are playing in, we have a certain amount of wealth that does not increase, does not decrease. The swas, it's all written when we will leave the body. And the game, the play is that whilst we have this wealth, we have an opportunity to trade and accumulate more for ourselves, or lose our wealth and accumulate rubbish, accumulate garbage. And Gurbani tells us that there's a true trade and there's a false trade. And we make this trade not in any physical store, but in the store that exists within our city. Gurbani tells us there are many, many shops that are within our city. Kaya kot apar hai, andar hat nal hai. Gurmukh sauda jo kare har vast sambhale. That the Gurmukh has the mind that comes to play has the option to shop at the different stores within the body. And these are the stores. Satogun, Rajogun, and a fourth store, Nirgun. So these are the stores that the Gurmukh can and the Manmukh can make a trade. Kaya kot apar hai, andar hat nal hai, the kul hat, tamogun hat, rajogun hat, satogun hat, nirgun da hat. Gurmukh sauda jo kare har vast samale. That the Gurmukh that trades in a particular way, and the Manmukh that trades in a particular way. So everybody comes to play, regardless of Manmukh, Gurmukh, every single G comes to play within this game, within these huts. Now let us describe what those huts are. I think somebody has erased the hut, so the picture. So I'm going to just draw it out a bit clearer now. So you've got Satogun hut. You've got Rajogun hut. You've got Tamogun hut. And you've got Nirgun. And for those who were listening carefully last week, you will have remembered that these huts are also described in Gurbani as the Sukhamaya. Rajogun, Tamogun, Satogun kahiye, e teri sab maya. So let's understand further. the mind has this precious wealth of these breaths. And the mind can shop at Rajagun, can exchange these breaths for certain thoughts at Rajagun, which are hopes, wishes, desires, expectations, anxiety. When the mind trades at Rajagun, this is what the mind buys. And what that means is that every single time we take a breath, we are making a trade, whether we are doing it consciously or not. And if the mind is making a trade at Rajagun, the thoughts will be hopes, wishes, desires, expectations. Whenever our mind is in this state, we are making a trade at Rajagun. We are using that precious wealth that is limited, and we are using it here at Rajagun. And what is the outcome? We're going to understand now. What do we receive? What is the outcome of spending our swas in Rajagun and in Tamogun and in Satagun? And as we continue explaining, we will start to see what the outcome is. What do we gain? What do we receive in return for spending our breaths there? Now, when we spend our breaths in Tamogun, Gurbani is telling us that the mind is in negativity, slander, hatred, anger, lust, ego, gossip, dubda, duality. Now this path, this is the path, this Rajo to Tamo. And Gurbani tells us that the Manmukh mind, and by Manmukh, I don't mean anything about the physical body. We're talking about the mind here. And we are all in the state of Manmukh when we are disconnected from truth, when we are disconnected from Nam. And the mind can then also switch into the state of Gurmukh when we are in a state of connection. So when the mind is spending a lot of its breath in Rajo and Tamogun all day long, so we can take a moment now and reflect, how many of those breaths that I take from the moment that the mind comes to play in this sarir, when we open the eyes, to the moment that we close the eyes, how many, as a percentage, you could think to yourself, how much of my swas are spent in Rajo? How much of my swas are spent in Tamo? How much of my swas are spent walking on this path of Tat, which Gurbani is, Tat kind of translate as kind of material path, materialistic path, the path of the Manmukh. And these huts are also known as, Rajogun is known as Agan Sagar, ocean of fire. And Tamogun is ocean of poison, Big Sagar. So we're starting to see what the outcomes are, what our state is when we are making these trades. So Rajogun, the mind goes into the ocean of fire. Tamogun, the mind goes into the ocean of poison. So when Gurbani tells us that when we spend our thoughts, our swas, in these states, when we are thinking these thoughts day in, day out, over and over again, and what we know from science is that 95% of the thoughts that we think every day are the same as the thoughts that we thought the day before, the day before that, the day before that. So we tend to be in the same huts day in, day out. Now, there is also another hut, the Satogun hut. And this contains good qualities, good thoughts, you could say. Qualities of patience, tolerance, compassion, religious actions. And this is described in Gurbani as the ocean of peace, Sukh Sagar. When the mind shops at Satogun, it finds itself in the ocean of peace. So when we are having thoughts that I want to wake up early and do my Simran, or I want to help that other person, I want to be generous, I want to do charity work, I want to donate, the mind is shopping at Satogun. But crucially, and this will take some time to understand, Satogun is still within the realm of Maya. It is still, Satogun is still not the highest trade that we can make. And as we start to learn more, again, there's so much depth to this, but we start to read the Gurbani and see that those swas that we spend, the account is taken. Chitr Gupt Sab Likhte Lekha. That whilst we are spending those breaths, Chitr Gupt is watching over, the entity inside is watching over and creating a record. The breath was spent here, the breath was spent here, the breath was spent here. And at the end of that life, when we see that account with our very own eyes, the mind is shown where it has spent its swas. And Amandeep Benji, who really likes watching near-death experiences, you can see on YouTube where people will always say that when I was taken, when I was in that realm, I saw everything flashing before me. My whole life flashing before me. And what Gurbani tells us, the Chittar is the one taking the picture. There's imagery that's recorded, and the Gupt is the written. So those, where the breaths are spent, all of that is recorded. And at the end, where we spend our breaths determines where we go next. So not only does where we spend our breath determine our experience in this life, whether we experience peace, whether we are constantly in a state of agan, of turbulence, of fire. Also, where we spend our breaths determines where we will go next. So when we spend all of our breaths in Tamogun, we end up being under the water, Patal, Lok. When we spend more of our breaths in Rajogun, we become land animals, working hard. Because in Rajogun, we work very hard. We take a lot of vichar on our worldly karam, those hopes, wishes, desires, ambitions. So we have a chance then to continue that working hard through being a land animal. When we spend more of our swas in Satogun, we are slightly taken into an elevated June, but we are still within Sarir. We become in Akash, we become the birds. We become slightly elevated, but we are still within this material realm. So, Sangatji, this is an opportunity for us to ask ourselves and to become very conscious now about this game, about our breaths and how we play. Because before we knew this, we could say, we didn't know that every breath mattered. We didn't know that we were making a trade with every single breath. We didn't know that with every breath that we were getting nearer or further from our great love, Paramatma. Before today, we could say we didn't know. But now we know that if it's a desire to escape suffering, we know. If it's a desire just to experience some peace of mind, and if it's the greatest desire that we can hold, which is to meet Paramatma here, to experience Nirgun, to go home to our true mother and father, Whatever that desire is, we now know that we have a choice as to how we have, what experience we have whilst we are in this Manuk Dehi, which could finish at any point. And this Manuk Dehi, Sangatji, it's a very, very rare opportunity. It does not come again and again. So we don't know how many swas we have left. We know how many we've spent now. But from now, we have the opportunity to make the true trade. Gurbani tells us, Ajahu samaja gach bigareo nahin. That nothing has been lost. Sangatji, please do mute yourselves. Nothing has been lost. You still have a chance. Even if you understand today, Ajahu samaja gach bigareo nahin. That understand today and nothing is lost. Bajale Naam Murar. Now is your chance, because what happens when we do bhajan, when we chant the Naam, we walk on the path of the Gurmukh. So we know the path of the Manmukh is Rajo to Tamo, spending all of our breaths in hopes, wishes, desires, gossiping, slander, where we experience pain. And we've been spending our lives, swas, in this realm, in this Manmukh path for many, many lifetimes, since Satjug. That's why we're still back here to play the game. But what is the alternative path? What is that path of the saint? Sant ka marg, dharam ki paudi. Dharam is the satugun, the dharam, the religion is when we walk from Rajo to Sato and outside to Nirgun. When we take this path, we are walking that Sant Marg, we are walking the path of the Gurmukh, the path of Prema Bhakti. And how do we walk that path of the Gurmukh? This is what we're doing, Sangatji. This is what we are blessed to be able to know and to understand, that we are doing the Simran. We have found that when we do the Simran, our consciousness starts to elevate. Whereas when we used to be on the path of the Manmukh, constantly trying to plan, problem solve, control, judge, negatively evaluate, be in states of anger. Now when we're doing the Simran, we are walking up this Sant ka Marg. Vah, Guru, Vah, Guru, Vah, Guru. And what the Gurbani tells us, what the Gurmukhs tell us, is that when we do the Simran, we don't even have to try to change our thoughts. This isn't a game of trying to change our thoughts. When we do the Simran, we automatically elevate our state of consciousness. Our vibration, our frequency of vibration lifts, and we are automatically elevated beings. We are those status of Devte. Manasato Devte pe Tyaya Nam Hare. Simply by chanting, bringing that mind back to consciousness again and again, we start to walk the path of the Gurmukh. And holy, what we start to find, Sangatji, is naturally, without even making effort, the mind starts to spend more time in Satogun. We start to have feelings of gratitude, of generosity, of compassion, of aliveness, of passion, of joy. And we know that the mind is getting closer to its true home. And as we do the Simran, as we practice the Simran, and the mind comes out of the grip of the Dragon, this web that the mind is stuck in. And who is it that takes the mind to these huts? Those Panjjor inside of our Sari. Their job is to make us spend our swas in this Maya's realm. And the Atma inside is continually calling out, is reminding us, do the Simran. Connect to Paramatma. This is your true purpose. This is where you will experience peace. And when the mind does Simran and goes beyond thought, it exits this material realm and it goes home. And this is where we start to experience the Naam, the Sehaj, the Prakash. We experience Paramatma, we experience our true home, we experience our true state. And then we are like the Kamal Ful that Benji was describing. Whatever happens within this material realm, it's going to continue happening. The losses, the conflicts, the turbulence. But Sangatji, the mind in its elevated state does not experience the sting of the poison, the sting of the fire. It is in a state of Sehaj and Anand. And when we go home, when we finish playing, when the swas come to an end, and we go home in front of our dear father, our true mother, and the Gurmukh, Dharamraj, who shows Paramatma the accounts, look, this is where the mind spent the wealth that you gave. And the Gurmukh goes, and the Gurmukh has spent its swas in Simran, in remembrance, in that state of loving devotion. And Parmeshwar, true father, Mata, Pita, gives blessing, gives a thappi, well done, Put. You won the game. You earned my love. You came back home to me, and now you'll be with me forevermore. And Sangatji, this is what we are doing this for, so that we can experience our Father's love. And we can live in that state and experience that state of the greatest love that we will ever be able to experience. So, Sangatji, at this point, we're going to do the Simran now. We are going to make the true trade. We are going to collect. We are going to earn profit. We are not going to lose our wealth. Because in that path of the Manmukh, those thieves, those Panj, they steal our wealth. Je marag luti panihari, oho marag santan durari. That path in which we lose that wealth, where those jor are present, where the lutana happens, we don't want to walk on that path anymore. We only want to walk on that Sant Marg, where we earn profit now, from this moment onwards. So Sangatji, let us earn profit. Let us make this janam, these breaths. Let's make this life fruitful. We're going to chant the Guru Mantra together. And we're going to put all of our attention in the sound of our voice. We're going to be fully present for this. And those jor inside of us are going to do what they've been instructed to do, which is to pull our dhyan into that false trade. Pull our dhyan into those thoughts of Rajagun, of Tamogun, and even Satagun. We want to get beyond that as well. We want this more than anything, Sangatji. We want to experience that bliss. We want to experience that love. And now we know we can put that effort in to bringing that mind back to the Simran again and again and again. So Sangatji, closing our eyes, getting ourselves into a comfortable position. We're going to chant. We're going to listen to the sound of our voice. Tun meh dhyan, dhyan meh janiya, Gurmukh akat kahani. Why Guru, 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 ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ 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 Vaheguru, 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 Vaheguru. Continuing to chant internally. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So, Sangatji, Amadik Benji, at this point, perhaps we should summarize or ask questions. If Sangat has any questions they want to ask.
There was a question about what if our hopes, wishes, and desires are to meet Vaheguru. So we were saying hopes, wishes, and desires come under Rajagun, but what if those are to meet Vaheguru? So Maharaj is tells us in Gurbani, Bin to the hor je mangana, sir dukha ke dukh, deh naam santokhiya, uttare man ki buk. So Maharaj kende that if we ask for anything but that desire to meet for Vaheguru, we will just get dukh again and again. So sometimes we want something. So for example, we want a new job, but we don't consider all the dukh that comes with that job, the headaches. We ask for a relationship, and dukh comes with that. Whatever it is that we think we're asking for. Sometimes we might be ill and we ask to be well, but what we don't realize is through that illness how much closer it brought us to Maharaj. So Maharaj Kende ultimately, just like a child they will always chase the 3D, they will chase the worldly things, the pleasures, but the parent knows what's best for them. In the same way, we don't actually know what's best for ourselves. But if we ask for Paramatma themselves, that's the highest thing that we can ask for. And then all of those pleasures, that thirst, that hunger for the external world disappears. So Hanji Benji, that is the true mang, that is the true ask. That falls beyond that Raju Guni state, because that is the only desire that we actually want, is to meet with Paramatma. And one thing that we realized is, I was talking to some Sangat yesterday, even when we're reaching for that chocolate bar, even when we're reaching for that new pair of shoes, whatever it is, it's recognizing actually there's a reason we want that, because we want to feel that peace. We think it's going to come from that. But even when we're reaching for that, when we acknowledge, actually, Vaheguru, it's you I'm looking for, it's you. tu karta, tu hua. It's always you. So Hanji, that is the most pavitr, that is the most pure icha, desire that we can have. And I would say that it doesn't come under those manga. Hanji, somebody's posted a bhakti. Mangana, mangan, nika, har jas gur te mangana. Har jas gur te mangana, Hanji. Amazing. So just before I go back into it, there was something I wanted to add. Yes, there is always this tendency. So Maharaj kende is dehi andar panch chor vas hai. Kaam, krodh, lobh, moh, ahankara. Amrit loote, man mukh nahi buje, koe na sune pukara. We have these panch chor within our body, that kaam, krodh, lobh, moh, ahankara, that lustful desires, the anger, the greed, the attachment, that pride, that ego. And sometimes even when we go into Satogun, as Benji was coming to towards the end, those are still at play because we say, "Main inne part kite, I did this much part, I do this much seva," but we still don't change. We still don't come closer to that experience of Vaiguruji because we're still, even if we're in Satogun sometimes, it's externally we're in that state of Satogun. We're doing acts of kindness because we want an exchange. We still want something in return that is worldly. And so what's important is that when we're doing that Simran, is to go beyond that circle of Maya that Benji was showing. And we have to do that by what Benji said, is by having that only one true desire. It is to meet Vaheguru. And there's one force that's more powerful than those panchor, more than Maya, more than what we might say is Gal, that force that is always pulling us back into the physical realm and the physical desires and attachments. And that force is love. So like Benji said, live tat doe raah hai, hukmi kar kamaye. We have these two options ultimately, these two pathways. One is of tat, is of that materialism, and one is of love. Jin prem kiyo, tin hi prab paya. Only those who have loved find Vaheguru, experience Vaheguru. So that is ultimately that force, that love, that loving desire that lived to meet our source, to experience our source, is what is going to take us beyond these desires. And the more Simran that we do, the more we start to go beyond these thoughts, the past, the future, the desires, the attachments, the greed, the anger, the resentments, the more we spend time in that space where we're doing the Simran, we're letting go of the thought, we're coming back to Vaheguru with love again and again and again. We start to experience this space where there is no thoughts, where there is only peace, there's only Saj, there's only Anand, there's Paramatma's Hazuri, there's that presence of Vaheguru. And the more we experience that, it's like gravity. Before the Panchor, Maya was gravity, it was pulling us down into conflict, into more desires. But the more we spend time in that space, beyond our thoughts, as we do that Simran, the more that gravity of Vaheguru pulls us, the more that love for Vaheguru, the more that desire for Vaheguru pulls us again and again. And just like those comments right at the beginning, where now we start to feel uncomfortable when we have even one judgmental thought, right? We start to feel uncomfortable when we start doing things that we used to really enjoy before, because now we've realized what is true and what is false. And as we come into the Sadh Sangat, as we do Khoj of Gurbani and we're reading those, what I call love letters of Vaheguru, and as we do that Simran, we have that experience, that is going to pull us more and more. So it is, again and again, we come back to it is about this loving path. It's about that love, about knowing the true creator, that true mother and father. So I'm just going to go back to the questions. So I feel stuck between Rajo and Tamo, and Sato seems unattainable for me personally. Yes, the Simran helps when I'm in that space, but when I go back into the world, I am in duality. Does this go away? So I'm going to invite Benji to answer that.
Hanji, I think Amandeep chose me to answer that because I also had a history of being stuck between Raju and Tamo. And so So when we do the Simran, absolutely, what we're doing is we're walking on that alternative path because we're no longer being pulled into those thoughts of Rajo and Tamo, those lower vibration thoughts. So now what happens is that when we open the eyes, we are not anchoring our attention in anything. So the dhyan is being pulled left, right, and center by those panj inside of us. The game doesn't suddenly stop when we open the eyes. It, the sitting down, the doing Simran is the preparation for the rest of our lives when we have our eyes open and we engage in the world. So how do we anchor? This is where we're going to move on to as we continue this course, and focus on in the next session. How do we anchor our dhyan? What do we anchor it in when the eyes are open and when we are in our worldly lives? And this is exactly how we start to then walk on that path of live with our eyes open. And so one thing we can start with is staying connected to the mantra with our eyes open. So we do the Simran, the mind is clearer, we open the eyes, and immediately we lose all connection, all dhyan, all focus. And so what we have to do is we have to consciously firstly become aware that that's what's happening. And then we start to do something about it. So we open the eyes slowly. We know that as we open the eyes, we're going to come back into the playing field and we haven't got that anchor. And we bring the anchor with us, So we do the Simran, whether it's antargat, whether it's out loud. Vai, Guru, Vai, Guru, washing the dishes, looking after the children, internally or out loud. Vai, Guru, Vai, Guru. And then we've brought the anchor with us into this spiritual realm. And as we progress further and further, and our dhyan grows and gets stronger, we can even just connect our dhyan to this space, this kali kala. Now we're going a bit advanced here, but this is where we're going to get to. We don't even need to be chanting internally the Gur Mantra. We start to be able to tikar our dhyan in this kali kala, in this space. And this is actually where Brahm is. Brahm is this sun, this space. And we start to be able to collect our fragmented attention to a point in this space so that we can connect with our eyes open. And then automatically we can't spend time in Rajo and Tamo when we are connected to Brahm like that. Gurbani says, Home naame naal virodh hai, doye na vase ikatai. That those two things, Home and Naam, or Maya and Naam, they can't be together in the same banda. So if the attention is in Brahm, there's no room for Rajo and Tamo. And holy, what starts to happen is we start to just naturally shift into being more Satogun. It just is a natural shift that happens, and it's hard to understand because in this material realm, the way things work is that we put a lot of effort in, we do a lot of planning, we understand the intricacies of everything that's happening. In this spiritual realm, we do the Simran and everything transforms.
So I would say, Benji, Benji was saying from Gurbani, Sant ka marg, dharam ki pauri, that this is the path of the saint, but it's a ladder, it's a staircase. So it is one step at a time, and it's very, very important to be compassionate. So Daulat dharam, daya ka puth. We need to have that compassion. Part of that compassion is understanding the game, which is what we're doing here, is understanding. It's not me, it's those bunch jord, or it's Maya, or it's Gal that's bringing us back down. So once you know that it's not you because you are Jod Sarup, or when you're in conflict, it's not the other person, it's those bunch jord that are within you that are pulling you down. So you have that gyan, you have that awareness. What you're then able to do is recognize, okay, I've opened my eyes, I'm doing something. I thought about something that happened 10 years ago. Now I'm starting to feel a little bit angry. My child comes in, I've taken the anger out on them. You start to recognize where the bunch jord are at play within your mind and how they are creating that suffering within our mind. So that first part is just that recognition. And the more Simran that you do, the more you're gonna see it. Because when you're doing that Simran initially, you're gonna see all these thoughts come up, right? And it is uncomfortable. The thoughts are coming, you're trying to bring your attention back, they're coming. And as you open your eyes, you're going to see more and more of those thoughts and how they're at play. So we've got to change that habit. And even if you bring that, I used to say, I used to get triggered by so many things before, and I would notice afterwards, but at least I noticed afterwards. Then, holy, I started to notice in the middle of me shouting at the children, I would notice I'm shouting. I would notice that's the bunch jord, and I would stop there, right? Change what you're doing right there. Let that vichar go. Recognize it's the bunch. I would verbalize that. I would say to my kids, oh, do you know what? Mummy came under the bunch jord. That was just a vichar. Let me come back to the Simran. Let's do some Simran together. Or I would do it myself. My favorite place, too much information I know, is just go to the bathroom. I'm going through that emotion. I'm having those thoughts. I'll go to the bathroom. And this might seem like blasphemy to some people, but I'll do the 5 minute Simran in the bathroom just to create that space so I can have that center of gravity to pull back to Paramatma, to do that Simran, to focus my mind, come into the presence of, let go of that vichar, and then I'll start again. So there's that part. That is the trying part. But the other thing, which is really, really important, and I say this every week and I really want to emphasize it, is that if we do that Simran long enough, that we go into that space of sun, where we have no thoughts, where we're almost falling asleep, we can be aware. As we progress, we want to be aware in that state. But for now, we might fall asleep. That is so important. Because Maharaj ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਪਰਿਯ ਮਤ ਪਾਪਾ ਕੇ ਸੰਗ ਉਹ ਤੋਪੈ ਨਾ ਵੈ ਕੇ ਰੰਗ. Those thoughts that the Panchchora are giving us of separation, of anger, of fear, of ego, how do we wash those away? Is through Nam. So as we go into that state of sun where we don't have any thoughts, through our Simran practice, eyes closed, then when we open our eyes, it becomes easier and easier because we're not the same person. We don't have the same belief system anymore. We don't have the same triggers. We don't have the same habits. And the more we go in there and wash this mind, the less and less power those Panchchod have over us. And the more and more we're imbued with that love for Paramatma. So it's just bringing that mind back. For me, another thing is just doing that ardas. If I can't do Vaheguru in that moment, if I can't do the Simran in that moment, sometimes the Panch is so powerful, right? Someone said something, my husband hasn't done the washing up and we've had an argument. In that moment, if I can't connect to the Simran, I will just do ardas. I'll be like, Maharaj, keep me safe. The Pancha got me. Maharaj, help me. Maharaj, help me. And that in itself becomes the Simran, because then I'm like, Vaheguru, help me. Vaheguru, help me. Vaheguru, 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 Vaheguru. And I'm just letting go of that situation. But we have to understand the resolution to that situation is not outside of us. It's within us. It's within the man. And where we put that attention of our man, jaisa seve, taiso hoye. That's what we're going to become like. So if our mind is focused on resentment of the past, we're going to become depressed. We're going to become ill. If our mind is focused on fear of the future, we're going to become anxious. If our mind is being judgmental of everyone else, we're going to become a judgmental, an unhappy person. But if our mind is anchored in Paramatma, in Vaheguru, in their love, in their peace, in their forgiveness, then our mind is going to make those guna paragat. Maharaj is going to give us those virtues. Our mind is going to obtain that state of peace, that state of love. So I think that's really important. Just even the fact, Benji, that you have that awareness that you get stuck between Rajo and Tamil, that is pure kirpa. Only if you can recognize that, can you do something about it. Sorry, I went off on one then. Hanji. So I'm just aware of time, Benji. Do you want to address a couple more, or?
No, I think what we'll do, if Susan Benji can record all the ones we haven't answered, that would be amazing. And then we will cover them in the Q&A on Thursday this week. Hanji.
And Hanji, also, feel free to put these on the WhatsApp group as well. So whenever we have time between us, and there's other Gurmukhs who are on this call, who are on the group, who have been doing Simran for a long time. I can see some of them on the video right now. I'm not going to say your name, but the family, the Parivar, you know, there's so many Gurmukhs who have been doing this for years, and they're accessing that state. They're, you know, having Vaheguruji's Hazuri, they're hearing Shabad, they're seeing Prakash. You know, if let's use that WhatsApp group during the week. If you have a question, just put it up, and you know, that's what Sadh Sangat is for. So Inniya Bintiya Parvan Gania, if you've made any mistakes, you know, if you have lots of questions based on this, that's a positive thing, because this is where we're meant to be asking the questions in Sadh Sangat. It's that school, it's that Jatsal. So if you have those questions, please ask those questions. Don't keep those doubts in your mind. And we'll try our best as a Sangat through Gurbani to answer those questions. So please join us on Thursday. We have a Zoom call. Benji, what time?
6 to 7 p.m.
6 to 7.
If you're not part of the WhatsApp group, please do try and join, because we share all of the recordings of the Q&A sessions there. So it will personally just message us. And I think the link's already been shared on the chat earlier on for the WhatsApp group. So please do join that. And Hanji, and we look forward, Guru Kripa, to seeing you all on Thursday, as many of you that can join. Hanji.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ